Hello, welcome to Algorithms. My name is Saurabh. Today we are going to discuss about prioritization of workload for a cloud adoption program. Now, establishing clear, actionable priorities is one of the recipes for successful cloud adoption programs. And there is a natural temptation uh, to invest time in defining all workloads that you have in your infrastructure that could possibly be affected during cloud adoption. But that's counterproductive, especially in the early adoption process. So, what we recommend is that your team should focus thoroughly on prioritizing and documenting the initial 5 or 8, whatever you feel is the appropriate size. Start with a minimum. After implementation of the adoption plan begins, the team can maintain a list of next 10 high priority workloads. And this approach provides enough information to plan for the next few iterations. And limiting the plan to 5 to 10 workloads helps you with agility and alignment of priorities as business criteria change. So you're not biting a big bite, so that helps you. And this approach also makes some room for cloud adoption team to learn and refine estimates over the period of time as with each iteration. Now let's go to the presentation. Okay, so when we say define workloads, so there are two different types of input that we need to look at. One is the business input and one is the technical input, and we need to collect data from both the audiences. So let's go through each of the data points from the business and technical. So workload name. So what exactly is the workload? Let me explain you very quickly. So your workload is basically it's your IT assets. It's virtual machines, servers, database, applications, and so on and so forth that you have. So you need to define what is this workload called. You need to give workload description, adoption motivations that we discussed in the earlier part in the previous presentations. Who are the sponsor, business unit, business processes? So which business processes will be affected by the changes to the workload? It's very important so that you reach out to the business owners at the time of migration, and everybody who is directly or indirectly involved should be part of the communication. Business teams, stakeholders, any executive whose business will be affected by the changes. And then business outcomes, metrics. What metrics will be used to track success? If you have defined it, uh, that's great. If you have not, you can talk to your Microsoft rep, or you can talk to us and we will help you define the metrics. Compliance, application owners, business freeze points. Are there any times during which the business will not permit change? That's a very important point because most of the time we forget about business freeze periods due to several reasons, and that's important to include. What I have seen, there is some seasonality to every type of business, so that is a high level criteria. Means they let you know that okay, this is our peak period and we don't want to make any changes during this period, but at the same time there are smaller peaks as well that you need to make sure are incorporated in your analysis and in the documentation. Then geographies, that are there any geographies affected by this workload? Means apart from which you are in. For instance, if your application is global, we need to list down who are the consumers, their count, the locations and different time zones. Now technical input is the adoption approach. So now the adoption is the candidate. So adoption approach, I mean to say whether the candidate is just for migration or you are trying to innovate a concept, or is it associated with innovation. Most of the time those who are trying to innovate something, they are way ahead in the cloud adoption journey, so they are not in the initial phases where they are trying to experiment. Mostly this term innovation is seen with the startups or like Uber. they are no more a startup, but they have a very advanced architecture, and they are already in later phases of technology, and they are trying to innovate new things using the microservices architecture. So this is what I refer when I say innovation. You can call innovation if you want to change any business process as well, but it's not advisable if you are an early adopter. Application ops lead, SLAs, criticality, data classification, operating geographies, applications, VMs. Specify an initial list or count of any VMs or servers included in the workload, number of data sources, their links, dependencies, list any asset dependencies not included in the workload, and user traffic geographies. So list geographies that have significant collection of user traffic. Once you have this data, then you have to confirm priorities based on the assembled data. The cloud strategy team and the cloud adoption team should meet to re-evaluate priorities, and clarification of business data points might prompt changes in priorities. Technical complexity or dependencies might result in changes related to staffing allocations, timelines, or sequencing of technical efforts. It happens most of the time because when you start with the prerequisites, and when you start to collect the workload information from the business as well as technical point of view, you start to see some changes in your planning in terms of when do you want to implement, and then that impacts your priorities, and that's the point where you reevaluate those priorities and make those sorting. um, so after a review both teams, why I am using a cloud strategy and cloud adoption team, because that's a pretty much standard org structure I have seen most of the places. If you are very serious about cloud migration, and you want to achieve cloud maturity in next couple of years, so you start with the training your team, skill assessment, skill upgrade, plus org alignment. So that's the reason, because these are the two teams which are involved in this phase. And then once you are comfortable with the priorities, then you get the approval, and so on and so forth. Now it's easy. Okay, I guess this is it from my side, from defining and prioritizing the workloads. But these are very standard data points that you need to cover. If you have any more data points that you have collected or looked at in your review, please let us know or drop comments in the comment box. And thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe it, and have a great day.